Welcome back to the Untrained Outdoorsman podcast. I'm your host, as always, Jake Fleischman. This podcast is brought to you by Osteo Gear Camouflage, Hunt Arsenal Saddle Hunting Equipment, Catalyst Archery Stabilizers, and lastly, but surely not least, Hunter's Blend Coffee. We appreciate everybody's support, and if you wouldn't mind, head over to Apple and Spotify and leave a 5-star review. And if you're on YouTube, subscribe and like. Hope you enjoy today's episode. Turkey season's right around the corner, so I'm kind of shifted gears a little bit for at least I get into that more and more every year, it seems like. So I kind of did my camera pulls. I'm in Southwest Wisconsin.
Okay.
So like kind of the driftless area. I'm right across the river from Minnesota and right across the river from Iowa.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of did my camera pulls postseason and then looked at pictures and dumped all them, and that's pretty much. I only got out a couple other times, ran some trap lines with a couple buddies. Other than that, I haven't really been out too much. The weather's been really hit and miss.
Yeah.
But I don't really like trudging through 2 feet of snow.
Yeah, we finally got ours melted here, but I haven't really been out yet. I'm about ready to get out though,
Yeah, I'm getting that itch too. But then, of course, turkey season rolls in, and I feel like I have to do that a little bit with buddies and got tags. And I don't know if you're familiar with Fort McCoy. It's an Army base.
Mm-mm.
I drew that tag. It's a limited draw. So that's first season. So that's only open for 3 days. That's April 15th through the 17th. So it mirrors our season when that opens. Their seasons are really short. They only allot so many tags. I know a couple guys I know didn't draw. So maybe I got lucky. So just something different.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, I don't get into spring turkey too much. I'll go like our season PA doesn't start till like the very end of April, beginning of May. It's kind of late. But yeah, I kind of start working then and don't get out too worried. I usually get out and I'm worried about looking for deer horns. It's still kind of not green yet. So that's what I get into.
That's what I was going to ask you. I know a lot of guys that don't go out with a purpose, when what they're scouting. They're either trying to find a shed and then kind of happen to mill around a spot a little more if they find one or two, or during turkey season they find some good sign and then that rest of that day turns into deer on the brain, not so much turkeys. So is your mindset more maybe figuring stuff out in an area you've hunted before previously? Like you go in with a purpose for that day, or is it, I've never been in this area, I want to just go in and kind of walk it all? Or what's your mindset this time of year when you're walking around? Like, is sheds on the brain and it turns into something, or is it trying to figure out one buck, or what's your thinking?
It's probably a little bit of everything, depending on my location or scenario that I'm into, what state or, so I'm thinking here, my next move, I'm going to, hit an area and kind of shed hunt and scout for next year. This is just one state I'm thinking about. There's an area I hunt, but I want to explore some new areas. So, and there's some ag there. So I'm going to kind of get in the timber near the ag, which is private, and maybe I'll find a horn, especially if there's sign of late season, maybe deer bedding, droppings or feeding, browsing, stuff like that. But also I'm thinking I want to find a location for maybe a hunt next October, November. And really, like with the Spartan Forge app, I'm always taking pictures and dropping pins. Like if I find some rubs, scrapes, beds, and maybe even like an access route that I might put in for next year, like how I want to access that area, do like a line distance or something like that. So and also in that state, I'm going to check areas that I've hunted more or less for sheds, because I feel like I kind of have the area I want to hunt already like pegged. Like I already know where it's a traditional area that I've hunted in the past. You know what I mean? So I might do some shed hunting, but so I'm always looking to explore new areas. excuse me, this area I'm going to go to I'm thinking it's a new area, but also another state that I'm going to hit is an area that I hunted this year, and there were acorns, and I think the deer maybe wintered there. So I'm going to get in there to look for horns, but I know that area doesn't always have an acorn crop yearly, annually, like every year. It's
Hmm.
like every other year, every 4 years. And so it's more of a shed hunt, because these deer is a vast piece of forest that they could, if they're there because of the acorns this year, they could be totally gone next year. So I'm not even gonna do anything more than shed hunt those pockets of acorns to just pick up a horn, and then I think maybe next summer, and then have cameras in areas where I know there's some clear cuts or where I think maybe the deer might move to, or in previous years without the mass that they'll be living. So maybe get some cameras in that area for a summertime area. Then I also have another state that I'm going to go to this spring that I put cameras last spring turkey season. It was going to be almost a year since, and I didn't even get to hunt that area. Just kind of pull those cameras to see what lived there through the season. Maybe probably do some shed hunting. I found sheds there. It was actually last spring turkey that I tried to do a turkey hunt, and then boom, I'm into picking up horns. So it went that route. So it's all dependent on each area, each state or situation I find myself in. I know when I was younger, I just was fascinated with finding sheds, and I would just look for horns, and I didn't turn on a mapping app and drop pins and scout for the following year. And I would get into the following season, and it was like, man, I didn't really scout because, where you might be
Yeah.
picking sheds up, it might be a totally different area that where they're at during the rut. So I think it's not just, I think depending on what scenario I find myself in, that's where I'm going to either shed hunt or scout. And it seems like it's a little bit of everything, going on depending on where I'm at.
Yeah. I suck at finding sheds, and I'll be the first one to admit it. For whatever reason, I know people that are great at it, and I go places where I feel like there's deer living, and never really been something I find. I pretty much just go and pull my cameras, and what I'll do is I'll just take a wonky way out back to the truck, like maybe an area during the season you don't necessarily want to walk for
Yeah.
whatever, it's like not good access when you want to hunt it. But hey, there might have been something hanging over here. He just never really made it to where I was at. It's a place that I've never been where you wouldn't walk during season. I pretty much just do that on areas where I've hunted before. And then new areas, I just kind of get the lay of the land and just walk it, see what it looks like, see what the access is like, but I don't really know what's going on there necessarily. But yeah, I feel like I'm just curious. I don't necessarily want to go out there unless I'm have a specific thing I want to know. Like I at least
Hmm.
have to have one pin on the map that's like, hey, I need to go check this out and do a little bit of thinking. Because if I'm just walking around, sometimes I get to the point where I stop middle of the day and I'm like, I walked for 4 hours and I don't even know what I'm doing out here. You know, like you're just out there walking. So it's just kind of in. I was just kind of curious on what your mindset is when you have like a very specific thing you're trying to find, like a buck that avoided you that year that you really want to figure out where he was at them couple of days you were in there hunting him that you thought he'd come through and never did.
I go in with an open mind, but like some areas, like I said, in the area where there's acorns, I'm going to focus more, and it's an area I already know. So yeah, if it's an area I don't know, like it's a combination shed hunt and scouting, trying to figure it out. You know what I mean? Um, but
Hmm.
I always try to have like every year or season coming up, I always try to have a new area. Like even though I think I've had success because I've refined areas and found areas over the years that associated to other areas or just kept would mimic other areas or just have the areas, you know, being in the woods so much, I have a lot of good areas, but it's always looking to find a new spot. So
Hmm.
yeah, like that spot I'm eager to go to this week coming up is kind of a new area. It just adds into, I feel like the areas you already have to hunt, you're just adding on to that. And then I think
Hmm.
when you're trying to be successful, then you got so many options. It's like the question is not A, B, C. the answer. You have A to Z, like you got a lot of choices to pick from to have success, since you've been in, there's like a lot of options for you to help harvest an animal, and then I think every year you add
Hmm.
an area and you just keep going and checking the areas that you've been in, or some areas you don't really need to check. You just know it's good. So you already have
Yeah.
that as a backup,
Right.
and then you got another, and you got another. I think that's what helps being in the woods so many years, that you have a lot of areas to go after.
It brings up a good point. Would you rather have 5 to 6 spots you really pick apart and you really spend your time in all the time, or would you rather just have an endless, maybe not as good of a handle on them, but have an okay handle on 20 spots?
Probably have more areas, because I think this year even it's weird. Like going into hunting season here in Pennsylvania this year, like maybe early October, I remember thinking, man, I've been hunting this area for a lot of years. I'm like, I have no idea where to hunt, where to go. It's a vast area that's doesn't have a lot of concentration of food or cover. And it's weird. I was like pulling my hair out. I don't even know where to hunt. So I think the more areas you have, other options that you can derive from, um, the better, the better off you are, you know. Um, but sometimes you could be limited. Yeah, I do. I'm kind of limited because I'm doing my scouting between like 5 or 6 states, to where I can only have so much. It's good that I have time in Pennsylvania, and over the years I get stacked area, stack up a bunch of areas to check. But then again, sometimes you don't get to those handful of areas that you've been in the last 15 years. So you don't
Hmm.
really have a good knowing of what some of them areas are holding. So, but that's because I'm just going to different maybe states or locations. But if you could just spend, like if I could just spend time in Pennsylvania and scout and find new areas, I think that's your best option. Having maybe 30 cameras in PA or wherever you're located, um,
Hmm.
definitely to help. I think at some point you're going to find in areas like, oh, this is it, or a certain deer or a certain area that you're gonna find this is an area to kill an animal. It might take 30.
Yeah.
It's not something that just happens. It might be because it's every once in a while I'll get a spot. It's like I can kill a deer here, this time frame, this week or this 3 days, and it's a spot that I can hunt every year. Because things change often. But man, if you could find that area, it's not often. Like with deer being kind of nomadic in a lot of areas, and
Hmm.
not having a huge pattern to them, it's hard to find those areas. But just being in, like, there's like 2 or 3 spots I found over the years. It's like a kill tree, I would call it. Like I can kill a deer there if I'm sitting here for these 3 days. But that only
Yeah.
comes with
It's
having a lot of areas, not just breaking down 3 or 4 areas. I'll just keep exploring, checking new areas, and then like I'll find an area, then I kind of mimic that, what worked in this situation, and I'll go look at the map and find that happening again somewhere else.
Yeah, definitely. I've only lived where I live now for like going on 5 years now. So it's kind of learning a new terrain, moving to a new area. It seems like now I have 2 or 3 spots where, like you said, this 5 day stretch during the year, you need to be there. So you kind of have those in your back pocket. And then the rest of the season, you're kind of trying to find where they're at. You know, it seems like I'm always expanding from that week I know is going to be, or that 5 days is going to be good. And you kind
Hmm.
of like a purpose of like getting better at early season hunting that spot or late season, figuring out where they're at different times of year. And I think that's like like this time of year, it's easy to walk in and find scrapes that were there last year, a rub line or beds or stuff. But it's like a whole, you're never going to get perfect at it, but really learning as time goes by, like how to differentiate what time they were there or why they made that, or not just walking through the woods and saying, well, I pinned all the scrapes and all the rubs I seen and just not really put any thought into why, that's all, it's all good, good stuff to know. But, it's most likely in a pretty obvious spot that everybody else that walks in there is going to see, you know, like trying to think of a little bit broader scope than that and like pick it apart a little bit more. It seems like every year it's, you know, trying to find one thing in your game that's not as good as you'd want it, or something you messed up on, and really honing that in for me. I don't know what it's like for you. A lot of the new areas that I find during the season, believe it or not.
Mhm.
Like when you're bopping around and I need to find the deer, and you just randomly go into a spot. All you got's your bow and your hunting system of choice, saddle, whatever, backpack, and your phone, Smart and Forge, Onyx, whatever, your mapping system. And you're just like, all right, I'm going in here today and I'm figuring it out.
Yeah, I think, like you said, your best time to find a spot is like in season because it's active sign that you're seeing and nobody's there. I know the one area I went in like November 20th, 21st, and this trail coming off the hill and the rubs were just like, wow. And that was all for fresh sign from like rut for second week in November or what have you. And then I remember going
Hmm.
there again in the spring, uh, fast forward to like April, right? So just a lot of months later, and the trail was, the leaves kind of blew over it and it was faint. It wasn't like the fresh trail I saw on November 20th. So you go into your springtime scouting and that trail kind of looks like that's all right. It didn't really tell me much of when the deer were utilizing it. Like it could have been to me a trail that was just had some moderate use throughout the whole season, but being there November 21st, it was ripped open, mud, dirt. So I always keep that in mind when I'm spring scouting is that like, did time do something to the sign to some degree, trails and, leaves and stuff like that? You got to kind of read between the lines to see that, or the fresh sign that is there now might be because the deer are there at that point, springtime, winter, and it might not be. So yeah, I think the best time is if you can. And people ask me, what's your best advice for someone that's new to hunting or wanting to learn? I said, go out during the season and find your spot, find that fresh sign and hunt it then. Sometimes the scouting I do in the spring, even into the summer, where you might think you're going to hunt that fall might be a 180. I've had that happen a lot, whether it's the deer your hunt passed away or it moved to another area or, the mast is different. Or in my area, sometimes they do herbicide sprays or there's new
Hmm.
cutting, or new hunters. There's so many variables that are going to happen from that April, May time frame in through the September, October. And I find a lot, it's all situational that you're going to plan from your spring scouting, and it's not always. You got to constantly be scouting going into fall, into hunting season, just to confirm because it's not always. You got to almost confirm that it's going to happen again. Excuse me, this year as it did maybe the previous year, and it's not always that way. Other guys are hunting an area, or it's just a lot more times than not. Like something's going to change. I
Yeah,
find recently in the
that's
last few
for
years,
sure.
I plan for the following year from the previous year and I do my spring scouting and I plan going on there and there's a curveball and it's like, so I'm constantly in October into November, September, October, and I'm constantly pretty much scouting every day. If I'm not hunting the morning or evening hunt, I'm scouting in the woods, like seeing where the deer went or confirming that this happened here again this year or checking cameras moving. It's a never ending thing. So, I mean, your springtime scouting is good and stuff like that, but that doesn't mean that's going to happen identically
Yeah,
that fall.
that's the worst too, because I see a lot of guys that will go out that this is the only really time that they're in the woods, because there's stuff's not green and there's not raspberry brush picking them. And it's miserable. A lot of guys go out for, a week or a couple weekends in the spring. They get their kill trees or whatever. They decide on a tree based on the trails or the sign that's there now. That could very well be that the deer are there later in the season. And then they go back in there in the dark, whatever time the next year, and then they don't see nothing. And then it's kind of like back to ground zero. And it was just like almost finding pockets or regions. Like maybe I'll say these three pieces of property I know I'm going to hunt. the next year. Like they hold the quality of deer. Like more so, I just want to be in an area where I know the quality of deer is good, and there's probably something in the area that I want.
Hmm.
And every day from there is just like a brand new, like wipe. Unless you have a very very close encounter, like obviously there's those days where a little adjustment the next day maybe could be all you need. But I was just talking about this with my buddy. We recorded another their podcast here earlier, and we were talking turkeys, but it's kind of the same thing where it doesn't need to be a big change either. Little micro adjustment. You could be 50 yards away from where you were the day before, but just throwing him off a little bit to where, you know, he comes through the next day and he might walk across your trail or look up at the tree you were in, but nothing's there. Just always keeping them guessing and
Yeah.
not getting too predictable.
Yes, for sure.
When you're out scouting, what kind of sign do you put weight in? I know it can be hard sometimes because, like I said, I don't really go out when there's snow on the ground necessarily. You can't see a ton.
So hopefully some of the areas I still have cameras out, and I pulled some, and I was just thinking here earlier today, I was like, man, I should have left cameras in this area just to see if what kind of survivors there as far as the deer. But if you don't have cameras, I like to find like a big track in the mud, or so I even like getting out. The snow pretty much is gone, but I don't mind getting out when the snow's kind of melting. You could actually see tracks, beds, or finding a shed is always good. But and it depends if you're shed hunting to trying to find that actual animal, or if you're just scouting an area like I'm going to do here in this place I go to this weekend. I'm just going to total new area. I want to find beds. I want to see where mark those beds, see where deer are wanting to lay down. Maybe trails. I'm heading to some feed. And usually where the beds are is going to be some cover, but I want to kind of mark that area. And if it's like you said, like I'll mark a tree maybe, but that doesn't mean I'll take a picture of it and I'll mark it to where I would want to hunt. But it's still like not etched in stone. Like that's a possibility. So I'll kind of find that because it's an area that I'm not going to be in till probably till October or November. So um, yeah, but I'll go in again in November. Probably I might put a camera there now, just let it soak till November because I'm not going to be back. Um, in an area that I could possibly access and get the camera without like not a cell camera, but just an SD cam. But I can get some inventory and easily access that when I'm going in October to November to hunt. But possibly marking a tree and beds and in the area I'm going to be, I'd say there's going to be some good deer just from knowledge of the area. So, and I'm not actually going to probably focus on one deer. If I get in and have a good deer come through, I'll probably harvest it. But yeah, beds, trails, take pictures of all that stuff because now's the time I'll be able to see all that, in the ags there and maybe trails leading to the field and just kind of put as much pins in the app with pictures as possible, and maybe an access in and out. So like a good kind of outline that it could possibly change when I get in there, but a good starting point. I know sometimes you kind of predict, or me or people in general kind of predict how the deer move through the area, and it's not always correct till you actually get in and hunt it. Then you're like, this is how they're utilizing the area. You can kind of know to some degree, but to actually hunt that area, you might know a lot better.
Yeah. And it sounds like you kind of do somewhat the same as me. My one piece of sign that I always put weight in, but bedding, and
Hmm.
then confirming that if I find a pocket of 5 or 6 beds, whether that's doe bedding or not, just like marking all the bedding and find out where all the possible bedding is. And then all the buck sign on top of that's more like an in season thing, like confirming it's there
Yeah.
day to day. A certain buck could have been aggressive one day and made a bunch of sign. It doesn't necessarily say he's spending a lot of time here.
Yeah, that's for sure. I've experienced that. Like when I was younger and getting trail cameras, I'd find a lot of rubs. Oh, he's spending a lot of time here, and you run a camera there. He never comes back. It's just that moment he just stopped by and made some sign, and he's well on his way to. He don't even remember those rubs.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Like,
I think I mean, one good thing about this time of year, you can get into those areas that you really can't get into if you have some knowledge about the area. Like I hunted a deer this year that I hunted an area this year that was want to see how I say I have new areas. So last year, or this past season, I hunted it my area that I anticipated on hunting. There was no acorns. It was an area that I didn't. I was hoping to hunt, put some weight into, and I didn't because the acorns weren't really there. And I did some scouting, in season scouting, and found an area that had some acorns, a little point. And so I ended up harvesting a good deer there, but not even knowing the whole area. So this, spring, I'm going to go in that's a good thing about springtime is you can go into these areas that you wouldn't like during the season go into, so you got like September, October, November, December, like you're not penetrating these areas. So I'm going to go into that area and dissect more of the bedding area, some thick areas to get to know the area better for next year. So yeah, I think the bedding area is a thing that you can kind of penetrate now and see what's in there, beds and stuff like that. I think now's the time to do that type of scouting, for sure. Otherwise it's kind of like I feel like I call it probing, where I'm just going in to some degree in October into November and just going in so far and learning
Yeah.
just
You're
the
only
outer edge of it, where you catch them coming like right before dark and that. And now's the time to get in a little deeper.
you're being a little careful during the season because you still don't want to ruin it if you're trying to hunt it. You're
Yes.
kind of tiptoeing around a little bit.
And traditionally, I want to be in every inch of that deer's uh, home. And it sucks when you can only be in the kitchen. It's like,
Yeah.
damn, I really want to know the rest of the house and how he lives. So now's the time to get in the rest of his home and see all that. And usually I
Yeah.
do know all that, but this scenario I didn't. So yeah, now's the time to get into all the nooks and crannies of his home.
And this time of year, I try to pick apart access. Is there a better way to get in here? Like if I was to hunt it a little bit different, I'd have to do this different, and then like actually walk it out and see like say you find a bed or a little pocket where you think you might bed, and then like getting over there and like it in hill country like here, terrain can help you and it can hurt you, but I look at it way more of an advantage for the deer and for me. You just got to know kind of how to use it, but like seeing how close you can get to them based on the crest of the hill or how much a point, like how steep a point is, like where can you get to, and like say, okay, I think I can get to right here, and then actually walk it out where you normally wouldn't do that during the year. You wouldn't walk through
Yeah,
there and like
yeah,
see what you can
definitely.
get away with almost.
Yeah, you're right.
And like how steep stuff is, you don't know. You can look at it on a map, especially people that come from flatland and try to hunt hill country for the first time. You look at it on the map saying, I want to get to this point, this inside corner or this point. I want to sit here, this ditch crossing. And then they get there and they're like, hey, that's a 400-foot,
Yeah,
elevation change. It's kind
yeah,
of hard to do in the dark, never being in there.
yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's
But
tough.
so, and then I want to kind of ask you about, kind of talked about it, but not in detail, how you use trail cameras.
I put them where I want to know if deer are there. I want to know the deer utilizes area. Now that might be in a big buck's bedding area. It might be where he's traveling across the ditch at night or on a point where feeding oaks might be. I put them where I'm wondering a big buck is going to be, you know, which could be in a lot of areas. Now, checking them because I don't use cell cams is a whole different thing. If it's in a deer's bedding area, like I know some big deer that are 5, 6, 7 years old, they use certain areas to bed in that they feel comfortable. And I want to know that he is maybe utilizing that area. Some of these deer don't leave a lot of sign as far as rubs, scrapes in their bedroom. And I'll sometimes check him at night when I feel like he's not in there. Or like if I feel like he's traveling from there to check a doe group. Scrapes, if I feel like a big deer, I can catch a big deer on a scrape. Sometimes they just move downwind, but in certain areas, certain states, I feel like bigger deer will participate in those scraping with the other deer.
Hmm.
And yeah, I put like last year going into October, I probably had almost 50 cameras, in like 4 or 5 states. I start pulling a lot of them, early in the season and moving some as I'm predicting where I might rut hunt, where I'm going to get in a tree. I'll put, for like a bow hunt, I'll put cameras there. So when I go hunt, I can see what's there, but, summertime's more browse, areas. Um, but I mean, some of them I'll put out in the summer, or like springtime to where I want to know I may not hunt there till then fall on year, like November. So just, I guess, just a little bit of everything. There's no certain one situation or one place that I like put cameras, your traditional scrapes. If I think of big deers using it, food source, maybe a spring water, like in summertime, going into fall, water is important. So yeah, just have enough of them. And I feel like if I'm wondering if there's a big deer coming through here, I'm throwing I just have enough cameras. It's not like, I know I've talked to some people that said, I don't want to use cameras. I have a couple guys I don't want to use cameras. I want to see if my woodsmanship is good. Like, what do you mean? Like, how are you going to answer your question? Put the camera out where you would think, like, hey, I think a buck's coming through, then let the camera tell you yes or no. That'll tell you if you're woodsman, if you're like, yeah, it looks like this is his track or something. Then you get a picture. Oh, okay, I'm right. But I think that's your best tool is to have a trail camera
Yeah.
there to deal. I mean, that's probably what I've learned the most, that and the mapping app in the last 15 years. I think the app is better because you could just see so much. Like with Spartan Forge, you got the UAV imagery now. It's an aerial photo that you could zoom in and see dead trees, deer trails. It's like you don't even need a camera. I could just go out there and scout and drop pins, take pictures. But it kind of like use the cameras to help answer your questions about what's going on. Like,
Right. Like
yeah,
not being
that's your best
afraid
thing.
to maybe more cameras in a smaller area than you would think to answer your question. Like you said, like use them to figure something out, not necessarily like I think there's a lot of guys, and I was like this for a long time, right? Where I thought I was covering so much ground with 10 cameras, like you'd put one in one spot on this 1,000 acres thinking that it is a good spot to have a camera the whole year, where there's not very many spots that a deer uses the whole
Hmm.
year. Like that's something I've learned. You need to be more calculated where it needs to answer a question. Like if I want to figure out, I think this deer's in this 20-acre block, put 5K, like, put it in different spots on that smaller area and figure it out and answer a yes or no, figure that out versus, you might get one picture of them during the rut on that camera that you thought would be good all year. Okay. You know, you could have been out in that best spot that day and seen them for yourself. What did that other 364 days you had it out do you? You didn't really answer any questions. You already knew he was there. You didn't really accomplish anything other than confirming he's not dead on that date.
The deer I shot this year, and I said earlier that it was a new area that I found. I put 2 cameras on this point where acorns were falling. There was rubs, and I had them there for almost 3 weeks. And I would move them. I hunted like sparingly, like once every 5, 6 days. I'd hunt because there was a lot of deer feeding on this point on these acorns, and I didn't. It was early October. I didn't want to. I had a picture of like 130-inch 8 point, and he was random. And I had all these young bucks, 2-year-olds, maybe 120 class deer all the time. And I was going in to hunt maybe that 130-inch 8, and it's weird because I would have thought for sure I had every deer in the area on that, every good animal deer in that area on those cameras. Because it was like some black oaks that there were falling right there, and there wasn't black oaks everywhere. So them are what the deer like, and the deer I shot, I never had them on camera. Running cameras in like a little 10-acre patch of oaks with rubs and scrapes, and the deer I shot was a 145-inch 8-point that wasn't on those two cameras. It was so, and I'm still wondering if like, was he living there, or did he just come? It was 6 o'clock. He just come walking out of that big stuff, and I shot him. But I had them two cameras, and I would move them like on this little 10-acre area, like I just for 3 weeks, and I never had the deer I shot. That was really baffled me, you know. And that was the area, like I said, I haven't been up into thick stuff any further, so I'm going to get back in there and learn a little more about that area.
The more you run cameras, the more you kind of realize how they not hurt you, but what they don't catch versus what they catch. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's more like a glass half empty versus half full. Like you realize what they don't catch everything. They a small fraction of what's actually there.
Yeah, this year was November. I was in a tree November 18th, 20th, and my camera was right there. I ended up seeing 5, 6 buck and 6 doe, and none of them went in front of my camera. So, like, you know, they were there within 30 yards of my camera, but no, so like I saw 12 deer, but you look at the camera, like, ain't nothing here.
You know, there's a lot of people that just hunt the pictures where they're only catching a fraction of what's there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely how to use them. But yeah, as far as cameras go, there's a trick to it. It's not it's a tool, and it can be abused and used incorrectly too.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yep. Just another tool in your tool. Yeah.
Yep. So then mapping apps. You're pretty involved with Spartan Forge. What's like maybe advice to someone or how you organize and maybe it's just a mess. I don't know. I know my app's a mess with all the pins I got and how everybody organizes them a little bit differently. So like how do you use your mapping app and like how do you organize it? Like how do you use it?
So first thing I do if I'm scouting for someone or just scouting a new area, I'll look at the historical data with the wind because deer are going to be living based off of. I'll go to like a November or October time frame when I'm going to hunt the area or whatever, and see where the wind is, especially if you have some hill country type mountain area. The leeward sides are important, but I would go look at that and just know that a deer's basically, if you got a predominant west wind, he's going to live, you know, based off of that wind direction to some degree. But the first thing I want to do is look at the UAV imagery, and I think Spartan Forge has like 70 to 80% of the whitetail states covered with UAV, which is aerial photos, and like any other mapping app has just satellite images, which you start zooming in, it's just, you get in so far and it's just gets blurry and it's like just a green blob. Where we can get in to see a lot of detail, you can zoom in further on the UAV, which is the aerial photo, and you can see like deer trails. And a big thing for me is like even boulders, rocks. Deer like to hang in around those dead trees. And if you're hunting in an area that's mature forest, you can see clear cuts, but like dead logs, dead trees, just something that they uh, want to lay down and use for cover. That's a big thing because a lot of my areas are mature forest, and also the lidar. You can see, I think a lot of areas are 1 meter imagery where like it will change at 1 meter in the earth. You'll that's can be seen on the lidar, to where you'll see like boulders or like old logging roads going up. You can see one big thing I look at is, even though you got your contours on 10-foot increments on your map, you can actually see how it's shaded really dark to where a ditch will go up, and it indicates a steep bluff, and then it just stops to where, you know, it's going to be an area that deer are going to utilize to cross. They're not going to, cross that steep area. They're gonna take the path of least resistance, or just like little bumps or little flat spots in the terrain, like on a hillside. So them are huge right there. But I mean, there's a ton in there. I mean, as far as line distance, area distance, you could drop any kind of pin you want, take pictures. Most of my pins, and I'll mark. Usually, I just use a pin for a scrape, rub, trails. Um, Nothing too. Don't get too far in the weeds with the pins. You know, as far as a camera, like I'll use like a red and blue. Like red is an inactive camera, blue is an active camera. I always leave the pins there if I had a camera there at one time. And sometimes I'll upload the pictures of that camera in that spot. But yeah, I'll have blue cameras that'll be active camera, and then it'll tell me, hey, I got a camera there, and then if I pull it, I'll turn it to red. But the big thing I use is a journal feature, to where every time I hunt, every day I hunt, I put a journal entry, and wherever, now you got a set of crosshairs on the middle of, which I think is a huge help on the center of your screen. Um, and I use that, like even when I'm showing someone where to walk, I use them crosshairs, and I scroll around on the screen and have the crosshairs an indication of where I would want you to walk or something. So that's a big help, having those crosshairs. But also when you're doing your journal entry, wherever those crosshairs are, it's going to upload your weather, your wind direction, temperature, everything. So in your journal, when you go back to last year or November 5th, you can see what the weather was. But I always write in or drop pictures of what I saw, what I think. A big thing for me is what I maybe did wrong, or what I should do, or what I need to do. And then even like after maybe a 4-day hunt, say I'm hunting in Ohio for 4 days, at the end I'll do a paragraph. Or man, 'cause sometimes I do dumb stuff. You get buck fever or whatever. Sometimes after the fact of the hunt, you look at it like, I should have did this or went there. So I'll always have like a little paragraph of what I should have did or what I want to do next year. And then I can look back over the past years and read all that, and help me get better, or help me decide where I want to hunt, based off my previous historical hunting data. So that's a huge, huge thing in there. I mean, there's a lot more to it on the desktop. There's um
Hmm.
Fiber Scout and stuff like that. But yeah, that's how I use it. And I think just the app, like I thought about, was my biggest tool as far as being a hunter. Is it the camera? What's the one thing I would have, as opposed to anything else? It would be the app. I mean, I could do without the cameras, but just having the app to, man, see, you could visually look down and see in detail what's out there. And it's just, then once you get to be good enough hunter, you can kind of just go right to a spot that you want, that's attractive, and you don't even really need cameras to tell you what's there. I think there's so many years of running cameras, though. I think that's where I could kind of, and like I get to an area where if I do put a camera out, I can predict what's going to be there. Like there's probably 130, 140-inch deer. It's going to be mainly nighttime. That's like, you know what I mean? I get to the point now where and then after so many years of running cameras, now I don't need that many cameras. Like I'm getting better at what I'm doing. So like, yeah, I got 40, 50 cameras, and through the season, I probably got 20, but I don't really need them. I know what's there, and I'm just hunting. Don't let them cameras dictate where you're going to hunt, or like, that's just another tool in your toolbox, to where it's like, I know this deer exists, or there's a good couple of, I'm just going to hunt, and then nowadays I could just hunt an area without even a camera, kind of just so many situations I've been in, and can, excuse me, look like another area that I know held deer and had all the same things going on, and just get in there and hunt. So
Yeah, it's like those little things, those little tools people might not think of.
yeah, I just get a
But
few out here and there, and like I said, into October and November, I'm hunting. I might have 10, 20 cameras, which ain't much, but I'm just hunting, and I had a
mhm.
good year. This year I shot 5 bucks. I should have had probably 7, 8, but I got to the point where in some of the areas were just areas that I didn't have any cameras. that I just knew this looks good. There's got to be good deer here based off of A, B, or C, and had luck. But I think it's all the years though, running cameras and learning deer and asking questions and hiking in the woods to get you to that point. But then I could be better because I don't need as much. I don't need, you know what I mean? I'm not weighed down with all this stuff I'm taking in the woods. I could eliminate a lot of stuff and be pretty efficient, you know? Is that
Yeah,
because you know more?
it's getting to the point where they're strictly out there in newer areas to like confirm or deny there's like a caliber of deer you want to go after. And then after that,
Hmm.
as well as I do, like it's all up to you to get in there and figure it out. The camera's
Yeah,
only
for
going to tell you
sure.
so much.
Yeah.
But as far as the one other thing I wanted to mention too, with like the mapping, like it's simple, something as simple as like organizing your stuff with, like you said, that's a nice feature, having the journal and be able to like brain dump after every hunt, because you're not gonna, at the end of the season or in the off season, you're not gonna remember every single little detail, especially like some like weather or wind or things like how many deer you've seen. The last little thing I wanted to kind of pick your brain about is like how you what's your thoughts on like pressure? I know that's like a very broad thing. Like how do you deal with the ever changing pressure? Like you never really know what it's going to be. Do you just expect the worst? Do you hunt areas taking into consideration what you think other guys are going to do right off the bat, or do you just kind of let it happen and like just have that in the back of your head and just?
I think like a mature deer, if you're hunting something 5 years or older, he already knows the pressure. You know what I mean? Like he already knows
Mhm.
where the hunters are. So now you could take that animal. It's possible that the longer he goes and doesn't see pressure, the easy in situations, the easier it would be to hunt him. Like I think the deer that I did shoot, we were talked about a little bit earlier, that didn't have him on camera, and he come by. It was an area that it was early enough in the season, and I was kind of deep enough in the woods that there wasn't any pressure yet. Okay, so he was a 5-year-old, 5+ year old deer that was out an hour before dark feeding, and I was able to harvest him because he wasn't like he pressure. You have to decide when it's there. Like he knows it exists. You get into like the rut November and October, but this was like mid-October, and maybe he back in the woods he didn't see enough people ever in his life that time of year. You know what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
I got back there, I was able to harvest him. And I could sense that there wasn't many people hunting over the years there, and that now I guarantee, like you get into rut, yeah, the rut could make him be stupid and run around, but probably guys are like in gun season. There's more guys to where he's gonna um be hidden and maybe be more nocturnal. But I mean, some deer that I hunt, and they're all different, but some deer I hunt live in amongst pressure, cars, hunters, and they're just always on point when it comes to hunting or humans pressuring them. You know what I mean? To where
Mhm.
he's pretty much maybe all the time nocturnal and a lot tougher to hunt. It's just all, I think you got to fill out the deer or the situation, so like in early season, maybe end of September, October, early on, usually in my areas that I hunt, there's not a ton of pressure. You get a few guys here and there, and you can still catch them on like maybe a summertime pattern. And then even to like the first week of October is when deer are fattening up for the rut. They're on their feet feeding a lot. And you could possibly just sense yourself how the pressure is as far as hunters, and like there's nobody hunting here in maybe a few years. Like you can get some good hunting daytime activity by just sensing. And I don't think anybody's, and then your cameras come into play too. Like I got him midday feed here, to help you decide. But like I said, the one I hunted, I never had on camera, but I just sensed that, I'm back in here a good ways and this is a good area. And I don't think anybody's back in here and the pressure wasn't a big deal, you know.
Hmm.
But I mean, there's probably areas like in different states that, you have ag to where they feed at night and the timber's close. It's easy accessible and really see the hunt where you got a lot of guys. They click into hunting mode real fast, them deer, to where that's a tougher animal to kill. He's probably nocturnal a lot. So I think the biggest thing is finding that time frame, the longer he goes without being bothered. So like all summer he's not bothered and he's all the way into October. And with historically, he hasn't been bothered. He's gonna keep doing what he does into October. He hasn't seen hunters, he doesn't associate that area with hunters. He's gonna and you could probably kill the deer then, you know what I mean? But I mean there's all situations. You go to states where have like pockets of timber with ag and guys are easy accessible, guys are hunting. Well, them deer are they're gonna be tough to kill, probably be nocturnal, so it might be a matter of going back in the woods a long ways or off the road, but they get into the out of the, October into November to the rut. A lot of my areas, a lot of these older deer, that's when they sense the most pressure is in around the Halloween into the first 2 weeks of November. And believe it or not, it's the rut, but a lot of these older deer, you don't even see them in the daytime because they'd rather survive than breed. And they're going to do a lot of their work at night. You'll get them times where you'll randomly see them, but a lot of it is randomness. I still feel like into that November time frame, I'm still tight to where they're bedding. I want to be in the thick stuff because that's where we're going to spend a lot of time. They'll go out at night, find their does. But yeah, you get pressured whitetails, public land like I do. Like it's, they're going to stick to some cover, some type of security cover, or some, terrain that can't, something inaccessible, for the most part. They can run a doe back to there. But yeah, it's always in the back of their brain, but the longer they go without being pressured, a better chance you got to kill them.
Yeah, it seems like it's just hunting the same spot a little bit differently based on the time of year. You can't hunt them the same as in the first week of the year as you're going to that October November time frame, and like I feel like I do that a lot is just worrying about my access more than anything. Like a lot around here in hill country, a lot of times, deer are bedded where they can see you, like the main
Hmm.
accesses and stuff, where
Yeah.
you might be able to get away with a lot more that first week or two, especially when you got all the leaf cover and it's thick still, to
Yeah.
where you could park at the main parking area and bomb in somewhere and hunt it, get a couple hunts in and be fine that way. But then, like as time goes on, you just have to maybe if you're going to keep hunting that spot, you know, like thinking about driving up the road a mile and making a big loop around and just like how you're getting in there so that because they
Yeah.
definitely adjust as season goes on to that, like you were saying. But yeah, I feel like related to pressure, my main thing is like I just assume it's going to be there and it's just going to, I just assume the worst all the time. And like,
Hmm.
what can I do? And like the one thing I always think of, the one thing that I can change versus everybody else is like how I'm getting in there,
Yeah.
not necessarily completely switching where I'm going, like the X, I guess.
Yeah. Accesses. Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's
that's
a good
one
one.
good thing to dial in this time of year is just like we were talking about earlier. You can walk anywhere you want this time of year and not worry about it and
Hmm.
kind of figure that stuff out, walk it out. Even I do that too. Like talking about mapping too, is I'll run a track all the time. Anytime I'm in the woods, I run a track,
Hmm.
and then I'll just keep that so when I'm in the pitch black in the dark, I can just turn my phone on dim and just walk it right in the same way I walked it
Yeah.
out before, and kind of do it that way. But do you have one light bulb moment for you that jumps out at you that you've learned, something over the years that just seems like it always pops up now that maybe changed some things for you, that it has helped you
Mhm.
out one way or another?
That's a good question, Jake. Let me think about it. I think a big thing with deer is food. Like if you can find where he's feeding in the daytime, especially October, like when I was younger, I think I always wanted to hunt a rut. I thought that was the best time to be in the woods, and I would take vacation or whatever for a rut. But lately, I think if you could like you can kill deer early season October through their belly. Um, I feel like that first week, if you can find where he's feeding, it might be an all day hunt. I think there was a study that mature deer outside of the rut are on their feet in state forest or whatever. I think it was national 70% of the time. So that tells me they're up and feeding because that's right before the rut. And that if you can, man, find where that deer's feeding and the pressure's like, so you got your pressure's low and the food's there. He's not traveling. It's not the rut. Um,
It's
if
probably
we
going to be
can,
pretty close to where if you find out where he's eating, he's probably going to be not far that
yeah,
time
and
of
it's
year.
a lot of daytime feeding too. It's not just, um, he's going to be browsing or whatever on something during the day. Maybe the acorns are where he's going in the evening, what have you. But he might be on the edge of like. I feel like anymore. That's what I'm trying. There's not enough guys in the woods, and he's isolated to an area where he's feeding. He's not putting miles on. Like like he's in a small area, and if you can find that, I think that's what I try to. A lot of my cameras I put out through the summer are based off of that right there. That first week of October, in different states. And I might be driving just to get, you might even get there before light and wait there all day, but I feel like that's a time that they're predictable. And then again, late season, I think they're predictable too, you know, anything in between that's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So just to better understand, like when you say food source, are you talking like the ultimate destination food source and like hunt them in between? Or are you talking like
No, I think he
maybe
gets
a
up and like,
transitional,
I think right where he's
yeah, like a
probably
natural
living.
browse?
Yeah. I mean, a browse is a big part of their diet, man. It might be, maybe there's an acorn tree there, or just some type of browse that he likes that he'll feed on. Yeah, it depends on what, you know, there's going to probably some
Where
security
you're at.
cover. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
because where you're
also
at, there's probably not a ton of
a
like
lot of deer
great
that time of year.
destination fields or.
Yeah. A lot of time that year, water is a big thing too. A lot of them big
Mhm.
buck are going to find everything they want right within 400 yards that time of year. Things change fast though. You get into the 14th, 16th of October, they're starting to think about does and scrapes, and then it just snowball effects from there. But it's that time he's going out at night making his rubs and hiking around. But the daytime he's in just chilling and feeding.
Yeah, that makes sense. Kill them through their belly. If you can
Yeah,
figure
that's
that
the
out, you
last.
probably have a lot more
Yeah,
encounters.
I feel like the last 2, 3 years, that's what I've been focusing on. I know the rut's crazy and you can't predict it, but if you can find that happening, you can kill a deer. Because we want to hunt where we can predict them to some degree, some type of pattern. And that's then and then again in December, January.
Yeah, that's a good one. So, other than that, do you have anything else on your mind related?
About it, Jake, I think. But I might try to take a hike tomorrow. The rain's going to let up in dark days. It's going to be cloudy again with dark ground. It's a good time to find some sheds. So we'll see.
Well, I'll let you relax and I appreciate you hopping on with me. Why don't you? I know you started documenting a lot more of your stuff now. Let everybody know where they can kind of follow along on socials or YouTube or wherever.
Yeah, I mean on Instagram I'm pretty active with the Johnny Stewart and also YouTube. I think I just put another video out, the Johnny Stewart of a PA gun hunt. I think I had probably 4 videos this year, and I'm gonna probably do a scouting one this spring. Yeah, that's it, man. And then start all over again, I guess.
Yep, every year's a fresh slate, and it's a good way to go about it. Well, with that, we'll wrap it up. I appreciate you hopping on it and talking with me. So,
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, Jake.